the truth of Earth and the galaxy around you. 3.
Andre, we believe, though we cannot yet prove, that our multiverse of universes is 11-dimensional. So think of this 11-dimensional arena. And in this arena, there are bubbles that float. And the skin of the bubble represents an entire universe. So we're like flies trapped on flypaper. We're on the skin of a bubble. It's a 3-dimensional bubble. The 3-dimensional bubble is expanding. And that's called the Big Bang Theory. And sometimes these bubbles can bump into each other. Sometimes they can split apart. And that, we think, is the Big Bang. So we even have a theory of the Big Bang itself. Now you ask a question, what about the dimensions of each bubble? Well, in string theory, which is what I do for a living, that's my day job, in string theory, we can have bubbles of different dimensions. The highest dimension is 11. You cannot go beyond 11 because universes become unstable beyond 11. If I write down the theory of a 13, 15-dimensional universe, it's unstable, and it collapses down to an 11-dimensional universe. But within 11 dimensions, you can have bubbles that are 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional. These are membranes. So for short, we call them branes. So these branes can exist in different dimensions. And let's say P represents the dimension of each bubble. So we call them P-branes. So a P-brane is a universe in different dimensions floating in a much larger arena. And this larger arena is the hyperspace that I talked about originally. Also remember that each bubble vibrates, and each bubble vibrating creates music. The music of these membranes is the subatomic particles. Each subatomic particle represents a note on a vibrating string or vibrating membranes. So believe it or not, we now have a candidate for the mind of God that Albert Einstein wrote about for the last 30 years of his life. The mind of God in this picture would be cosmic music resonating throughout 11-dimensional hyperspace.
We start with a point. Like the point we know from geometry, it has no size, no dimension. It's just an imaginary idea that indicates a position in a system. A second point, then, can be used to indicate a different position. But it, too, is of indeterminate size. To create the first dimension, all we need is a line joining any 2 points. A first-dimensional object has length only, no width or depth. If we now take our first-dimensional line and draw a second line crossing the first, we've entered the second dimension. The object we're representing now has a length and a width, but no depth. To help us with imagining the higher dimensions, we're going to represent our second-dimensional object as being created using a second line which branches off from the first. Now let's imagine a race of 2-dimensional creatures called flatlanders. What would it be like to be a flatlander living in their 2-dimensional world? A 2-dimensional creature would have only length and width, as if they were the royalty on an impossibly flat playing card. Picture this. A flatlander couldn't possibly have a digestive tract because the pipe from their mouth to their bottom would divide them into 2 pieces. And a flatlander trying to view our 3-dimensional world would only be able to perceive shapes in 2-dimensional cross-sections. A balloon, for instance, would start as a tiny dot, become a hollow circle which inexplicably grows to a certain size, then shrinks back to a dot before popping out of existence. And we 3-dimensional human beings would seem very strange indeed to a flatlander. Imagining the third dimension is the easiest for us because every moment of our lives, that's what we're in. A 3-dimensional object has length, width, and height. But here's another way to describe the third dimension. If we imagine an ant walking across a newspaper which is lying on a table, we can pretend that the ant is a flatlander, walking along on a flat 2-dimensional newspaper world. If that paper is now folded in the middle, we create a way for our flatlander ant to magically disappear from one position in his 2-dimensional world and be instantly transported to another. We can imagine that we did this by taking a two-dimensional object and folding it through the dimension above, which is our third dimension. Once again, it'll be more convenient for us as we imagine the higher dimensions if we can think of the third dimension in this way. The third dimension is what you fold through to jump from one point to another in the dimension below. The first three dimensions can be described with these words: length, width, and depth. What word can we assign to the fourth dimension? One answer would be duration. If we think of ourselves as we were 1 minute ago, and then imagine ourselves as we are at this moment, the line we could draw from the 1 minute ago version to the right now version would be a line in the fourth dimension. If you were to see your body in the fourth dimension, you'd be like a long undulating snake, with your embryonic self at one end and your deceased self at the other. But because we live from moment to moment in the third dimension, we're like our second dimensional flatlanders. Just like that flatlander who could only see two-dimensional cross-sections of objects from the dimension above, we, as three-dimensional creatures, can only see three-dimensional cross-sections of our fourth-dimensional self. One of the most intriguing aspects of there being one dimension stacked on another is that down here in the dimensions below we can be unaware of our motion in the dimensions above. Here's a simple example. If we make a Mobius strip, take a long strip of paper, add one twist to it and tape the ends together, and draw a line down the length of it, our line will eventually be on both sides of the paper before it meets back with itself. It appears, somewhat amazingly, that the strip has only one side, so it must be a representation of a two-dimensional object. And this means that a two-dimensional flatlander, traveling down the line we just drew, would end up back where they started without ever feeling like they had left the second dimension. In reality, they would be looping and twisting in the third dimension, even though to them it felt like they were traveling in a straight line. The fourth dimension, time, feels like a straight line to us, moving from the past to the future. But that straight line in the fourth dimension is, like the Mobius strip, actually twisting and turning in the dimension above. So the long undulating snake that is us will feel like it is moving in a straight line in the fourth dimension, but there will actually be, in the fifth dimension, a multitude of paths that we could branch to at any given moment. Those branches will be influenced by our own choice, chance, and the actions of others. Quantum physics tells us that the subatomic particles that make up our world are collapsed from waves of probabilities simply by the act of observation. In the picture we are drawing for ourselves here, we can now start to see how each of us are collapsing the indeterminate wave of probable futures contained in the fifth dimension into the fourth dimensional line that we are experiencing as time. What if you wanted to go back into your own childhood and visit yourself? We can imagine folding the fourth dimension through the fifth, jumping back through time and space to get there. But what if you wanted to get to the world where, for example, you had created a great invention as a child that by now had made you famous and rich? We can imagine our fourth dimensional selves branching out from our current moment into the fifth dimension. But no matter where you go from here, the great child inventor timeline is not one of the available options in your current version of time. You can't get there from here, no matter how much choice, chance, and the actions of others become involved. There are only two ways you could get to that world. One would be to travel back in time, somehow trigger the events that caused you to come up with your invention, then travel forward in the fifth dimension to see one of the possible new worlds that might have resulted. But that would be taking the long way. The shortcut we could take would involve us folding the fifth dimension through the sixth dimension, which allows us to instantly jump from our current position to a different fifth dimensional line. In our description of the fourth dimension, we imagine taking the dimension below and conceiving of it as a single point. The fourth dimension is a line which can join the universe as it was 1 minute ago to the universe as it is right now. Or, in the biggest picture possible, we could say that the fourth dimension is a line which joins the Big Bang to one of the possible endings of our universe. Now, as we enter the seventh dimension, we're about to imagine a line which treats the entire sixth dimension as if it were a single point. To do that, we have to imagine all the possible timelines, which could have started from our Big Bang, joined to all the possible endings for our universe, a concept which we often refer to as infinity, and treat them all as a single point. So for us, a point in the seventh dimension would be infinity, all possible timelines which could have or will have occurred from our Big Bang. When we describe infinity as being a point in the seventh dimension, we're only imagining part of the picture. If we're drawing a seventh dimensional line, we need to be able to imagine what a different point in the seventh dimension is going to be, because that's what our line is going to be joined to. But how can there be anything more than infinity? The answer is, there can be other completely different infinities created through initial conditions which are different from our own Big Bang. Different initial conditions will create different universes, where the basic physical laws such as gravity or the speed of light are not the same as ours. And the resulting branching timelines from that universe's beginning to all its possible endings will create an infinity which is completely separate from the one which is associated with our own universe. So the line we draw in the seventh dimension will join one of those infinities to another. And as boggling as the magnitude of what we're exploring here might be, if we were to branch off from that seventh dimensional line to draw a line to yet another infinity, we'd then be entering the eighth dimension. As we've explored already, we can jump from one point in any dimension to another simply by folding it through the dimension above. If our ant on the newspaper were a two-dimensional flatlander, then folding his two-dimensional world to the third dimension would allow him to magically disappear from one location and appear in a different one. As we're now imagining the ninth dimension, the same rules would apply. If we were to be able to instantaneously jump from one eighth dimensional line to another, it would be because we're able to fold through the ninth dimension. Before we discuss the first dimension, we could say that we first started out with dimension 0, which is the geometrical concept of the point. A point indicates a location in a system, and each point is of indeterminate size. The first dimension then takes two of these points and joins them with a line. When we imagined the fourth dimension, it was as if we were treating the entirety of three-dimensional space in a particular state as a single point, and drawing a fourth-dimensional line to another point, representing space as it is in a different state. We often refer to the line we have just drawn as time. Then, in the seventh dimension, we treated all of the possible timelines which could be generated from our Big Bang as if this were a single point, and imagine drawing a line to a point representing all the possible timelines for a completely different universe. Now, as we enter the 10th dimension, we have to imagine all the possible branches for all the possible timelines of all the possible universes and treat that as a single point in the 10th dimension. So far, so good. But this is where we hit a roadblock. If we're going to imagine the 10th dimension as continuing the cycle and being a line, then we're going to have to imagine a different point that we can draw that line to. But there's no place left to go. By the time we have imagined all possible timelines for all possible universes as being a single point in the 10th dimension, it appears that our journey is done. In string theory, physicists tell us that superstrings vibrating in the 10th dimension are what create the subatomic particles which make up our universe, and all of the other possible universes as well. In other words, all possibilities are contained within the 10th dimension, which would appear to be the concept we have just built for ourselves, as we imagined the 10 dimensions built one upon another. Imagining the 0th dimension. Not long ago, I started a more in-depth series about the nature of each dimension, but I started with imagining the 2nd dimension. Some people have asked why I didn't go right back to the beginning, so let's try that now. Here's how I would start this discussion. With imagining the 10th dimension, we start from a 0, which some would call a 0th dimension, and we move to the 1st, 2nd, and beyond using a repeating logical structure to eventually end up at a timeless, ultimate ensemble. When you get right down to it, that's what every respectable toe or theory of everything needs to describe. Some underlying thing that all else is derived from. Otherwise, you're back to the turtles all the way down joke that often comes up in these discussions. Reconciling this timeless everything, which with my project I'm calling the 10th dimension in its unobserved state, with the zero that we start from, a point of indeterminate size, is the mind-blowing concept we arrive at with my project once we've imagined all 10 dimensions. I have often insisted that zero is not a dimension because after all we need 2 new directions to travel within to define a spatial dimension. I have also suggested that the 0 and 10 represented on my helix logo for this project are shown to be on a line within the other dimensions because they represent the 2 directions which take us towards the infinitely large one way and the infinitesimally small the other. Connecting 0 to 10 is the most recent entry where we've talked about that idea. But consider this. Even if we ignore everything but this 0, this point of indeterminate size, we should remember what this means. Even though we tend to think of this point as having no size, the definition of indeterminate is really all possible values are true. Incredibly, that means that this lowly point that we start from does have a way that we can think of it as being infinitely large, encompassing absolutely everything within the information that becomes reality. So with that in mind, and for the sake of discussion here, let's continue to pursue this idea that there could be a 0th dimension. We began this entry with a quote from Charles Seif's Zero, the Biography of a Dangerous Idea, a book which discusses the relatively recent origin of this most powerful of numbers. Why does Seif call 0 a dangerous idea? As an example, his preamble chapter includes an anecdote about a billion-dollar warship that was suddenly dead in the water when a software bug resulted in a divide by 0 error which completely crashed the computers running the ship. Then chapter 1 begins with these thoughts. As natural as 0 seems to us today, for ancient people 0 was a foreign and frightening idea. An Eastern concept born in the Fertile Crescent a few centuries before the birth of Christ, 0 not only evoked images of a primal void, it also had dangerous mathematical properties. With 0, there is the power to shatter the framework of logic. The beginnings of mathematical thought were found in the desire to count sheep and in the need to keep track of property and of the passage of time. None of these tasks requires 0. Civilizations functioned perfectly well for millennia before its discovery. Indeed, 0 was so abhorrent to some cultures that they chose to live without it. Gavin Gjorbrand, author of the brilliant Everything Forever, Learning to See Timelessness, liked to point out that some cosmologists say the accelerating expansion of the universe will eventually take us to an absolute 0 of perfectly flat space, an empty and formless void which seems like the most grim future imaginable. Gavin's take on this idea was that this 0 we're headed towards is not empty, but full of all the other possible states, and this can be supported by the commonly held viewpoint that our universe arises from the breaking of an underlying symmetry. This means that our universe is now headed back towards a natural return to the perfectly balanced whole that exists both before and after the existence of our universe. Here's a quote from chapter 20 of Gavin's book. 1 plus negative 1, plus 2 plus negative 2, plus 3 plus negative 3, plus and so on, equals 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus and so on, which equals 0. The simplest, most straightforward way of summing all numbers is to sum the equal but opposite numbers together as shown here. So for a moment, we will imagine that the correct sum of all numbers does sum up to and equal 0. Except this means that we need to change the value of 0 away from being no things. We need to treat 0 as the largest value in the mathematical system, which actually includes the 2 already vast infinities of positive and negative numbers. Suddenly 0 has become an infinite whole that contains all other numbers. Every positive and every negative number on the real number plane is summing or combining together to form an ultimate number of absolute value. Obviously, this is not math as we know it. This is a math without time, without process, a math of truly infinite values. So we have made a dramatic change, and the next step is to see the effect that changing the value of 0 has had on the value of other numbers. If we are going about this bravely, as we are imaginatively exploring a series of ideas, and so the brain is actually working, we notice that the values of other numbers have also changed, transformed in the same shift that we have taken with 0. Ordinarily, the nothing of 0 is a foundational axiom. Our foundation is shifted dramatically. What now is the value of 1 or 2? If 0 is seen to contain all other numbers, then logically all other numbers must have a lesser value than that of 0. If 0 is the largest value, the only way there can be lesser values is if we remove some measure of value from the whole of 0. For example, suppose that we take away a -1 from 0. What remains in the absence of that -1? 0 is still very large, but 0 is no longer an absolute value containing all other numbers. Something has been removed from it. But what value does 0 transform into to show that loss? The answer is simply that 0 minus -1 equals 1. The missing -1 causes 0 to transform into the value 1. If 0 contains all numbers within it, and we take away a value, 0 then contains all numbers except the removed value. So it is still a very large number like 0, but it is no longer the complete whole of all numbers. It is 1, a very large number 1. So if we treat what just happened as the logical rule, we can now discover the values of other numbers in this system. For example, the number 2 is the sum of all numbers except -2 is missing. So it is also near 0, but its content is less than 0 and less than 1. The number 3 contains all other numbers except -3. So it is very large, but smaller than 2, 1, and 0, and so on and so on. The transformation that has happened is not simply an inverse reversal of ordinary mathematics. Rather, in this mathematical system, the value of a number decreases as we count towards greater numbers, since more of the negative numbers are being removed and placed somewhere else. Now, I should point out, just for the sake of clarity, that switching to the negative, the number -1, is a combination of all numbers except that a positive 1 is removed, which would otherwise create the balance of 0. And in removing a positive 2, the whole shows that loss by becoming the number -2. Unlike ordinary math, where negative values are less than nothing at all, here the numbers -1 and -2 are very large. In fact, the content of -1 is equal but inverse to the content of +1. In physics, matter and antimatter particles are equally substantive, yet inverse in form and structure. Do you follow Gavin's logic here? Saying that 0 minus -1 equals 1 really makes perfect sense in ordinary math. But framing this idea in terms of 0 being full and any of the other numbers as being slightly less than that requires a powerful mental shift. This shift takes us to an understanding that the broken symmetry that creates our universe or any other is defined by what's missing from it. In the case of our own universe, we know there is much less antimatter than would be expected if our universe is derived from an underlying symmetry state. So it is this absence of antimatter which is one of the defining factors that resulted in our particular universe. There's no question in my mind, Gavin Goguan was a genius, and I'm sad that he's no longer with us. And P.S., I really should remind everyone that Gavin's book is available in hardcover, softcover, or as a downloadable PDF from 10thdimension.com/store.
Shalom everybody. Brothers and sisters, this is Rasta President. I want to bring some information out for the Hebrew Israelites. So, I know that you guys are searching a lot about our history. This is a book called the Pistis Sophia, edited by the Gnostic movement, right? And it's supposed to be the words of the Savior of the world, Christ, given to the disciples after his resurrection. The original was found in Egypt in the 18th century, written in Coptic. Okay? And in this book there's the commentary of the founder of the Gnostic movement, Samael Aon Weor. I've been studying with the Gnostic movement back in Reunion Island for a year. Gnosis means science, right? It's supposed to be the hidden science of the mystery schools of Babylon, of Egypt, of the Mayas. It's supposed to be the mystic science of the Hebrews, of Christianity, of Islam, all religions. The founder was called Samael. I found that Samael was the name of a demon. And actually, in this movement, I tell you be careful, because they have some practices, some rites where they call demons, they call fallen angels. So be careful, all right? Samael Onweo was the founder of the Gnostic movement. He was a Colombian, and he founded the movement in Colombia, in Mexico, in South America. And the Gnostic movement, I did some studies about it, and this movement is actually linked with Freemasonry. Like it is linked to the other branches of Freemasonry you find in the USA, in UK. It's linked to the Scottish Rite. Okay. At the time, I was not aware that I was a Hebrew, and who were the Hebrew Israelites, and who were the lost tribes of Israel. But anyway, I did some research later on this movement, and I found that this movement is quite spiritually dangerous, because, you know, Samael Onwera gave some rituals and practices where actually you call demons, you call fallen angels. So be careful, everybody, with this movement, right? But anyway, I wanted to bring some information which is in there. So what is Kabbalah really? Kabbalah is the tree of life. Kabbalah is the map of the universe, right? So this knowledge can be used either for self-realization, for self-union with God, with the divine, with the infinite, with the Most High, or it can be used for evil purposes, right? It can be used for bad and for good. The good is what? Self-realization. And the evil, right, of Kabbalah is that it can be used for domination, right, for mind control. Okay, so let's have a look at it. It's written what? Sephirotic system of 10 divine names. So we're going to have 10 names here, 10 names of God, right, that these people in the secret societies believe are the names of God, right? So let's have a look at it. Sephiroth 10. Kingdom. So I remind you, this is a map of the universe. This is supposed to be, according to them, it's supposed to be the physical world, and it's called what? Malakut, kingdom. And what is the Hebrew name here? Adonai. 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 Okay. Then what do you have? The Sephiroth is Yesod. Yesod, foundation. What name do you have? Elohim. Eloah. Alahaya, right? Then what do you have here? Sephiroth 8, right? Honor or glory. Elohim Tsabaoth. Elohim Tsabaoth, right? The God of hosts. Sephiroth 7, victory. What do you have here? Yahweh Tsabaoth. Yahweh Tsabaoth, right? Okay. Then, we have our symbols here, right? What was in the temple? and you have Tiferet, the realm, the world of grace. Yahweh, right? The name is Yahweh, Yod-He, Waw-He, or Yahuwah, or Yahweh, whatever. Sephiroth 5, right? Fear, severity. Pechad, Elohim. Sephiroth 4, magnificence, Allah or El, right? Chesed, mercy. The name here is El. Then what do you have here? You have the laws, you see? Tables of Moses. The law of Moses is reflection of eternal law. So they know we have to follow the law to succeed in life, you know, to be one with God, with the Almighty, to have self-realization. They know we have to follow the laws of Moses. And by the way, here in the human body, it is supposed to be the heart, the place of the heart, right? So it reminds me of a verse in the Tanakh where it says that this day I will put my laws in their hearts. This is the heart chakra, because this is a map of the chakras as well in the human body. This is a map of the universe, and this is the map of the chakras, because we are made in the image of the universe. Here, what do we have? Sephiroth 3, intelligence or spirit. What is the name? Yahweh Elohim, right? Sephiroth of Bina, intelligence. Yahweh Elohim is the name, right? Then Sephiroth 2, highest wisdom. What is the name? Yah. Yah is the name. Then what do you have? The last one, highest crown, horizon of eternity, Sephiroth first. What is the name here? Ahaya. Ahaya, the crown. You know, in the body, this is the crown chakra, which is here. Here, right? The crown chakra. So this chakra is the link, you know, is a link of yourself with the Father, the infinite, the divine, right? So interesting, is it? So the highest name they give here is Ahaya, the highest name of the highest crown. You see, they know all the names. So we have all these names. You know, in the Bible, some brothers believe that the other names other than Ahaya were injected. Others believe that they were not injected, that all that is true. But anyway, I just wanted to I don't want to say, well, this Israelite group is false, this is true, this is untrue. We're all brothers, you know, we are one nation. I wanted to bring this information. So it's interesting, they know the highest name in the secret societies, the Illuminatis. They know the highest name is Ahaya. Ahaya, Asher Ahaya, right? The name given to Moses. They know we have to follow the laws of Moses to succeed. Okay? They know it. They know we have to follow the commandments, right? Have to follow the law to succeed, to have self-realization, right? To be who we are, to be who we are, really. And this is the purpose of life, to know who you really are, to know your real self, your essence. Because at the end of the day, you're not this body, you're not this nationality, you're not This blood, you're not your DNA, you're what? Ahaya, you are, that's what you are. You're a part of the divine, right? A part of the divine that came down from the highest, from the horizon of eternity, that came down here in the realm of Malkut, you know, to taste of this reality here, right? And the aim is to realize who we are and go back there, right? And the only way is to follow the law. We have to follow the law. And also this Sephiroth here is said to be the Sephiroth of Christ. And you see, the name is Tiferet, which means grace, right? So here is Christ. And they know that Christ is the way and that you have to follow the law, right? I insist on that, really. So basically we are in this dimension, in our physical bodies, and we have to follow the way Christ, follow the law to get to the heavenly Father. Ahaya. Yes, I found this name Ahaya. I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do a video and bring this information out, right? They know Ahaya is the highest name. I am that I am. Ahaya is the highest name because when you meditate on the I am, on your true essence, you know, when you close your eyes and you meditate on the I am, on your own presence, the Ahaya, I am, this is when you get to know who you really are.
It's in Australia, and when you look at it from Google, okay, you can see it laid out on the ground. It's a hexagon and a hexagon and a hexagon, and we know that the hexagon is really a two-dimensional version of a three-dimensional cube. But what's interesting is right in the middle of that is a thing that's called harp. If most of you know what that is, I don't think it's what people assume it is. I'll explain it here in a second. So you got harp, which is an array of antennas, yeah? And so those antennas, people are blaming all kinds of weather phenomena and stuff. I don't believe that. I think this is being done on a much higher level than harp. But so you have the Kabbalistic cube and a cube and a cube, and 3 cubes is 3, 3. That's 3 times 3, or 3 squared. So you got 3 squares, right? Equals 9. And 9 is the occultic number for Saturn. Okay, but what's interesting is that the place where this is sitting, yeah? This is the name of it. You ready? If you're sitting down, stand up. If you're standing up, sit down. It's called Exmouth. Exmouth. But let's break the word down. Exmouth. It doesn't matter, you can leave the E or take the E off. So you have X, just the letter X, yeah? Dash, and then we have mouth, X-mouth. X represents the planet Saturn, and mouth is something that you speak with. And then you have the array of antennas called harp. Now this is another play with letters. What they did is they did like the same thing with Google, which is really Gog-L, which is Global Occult Government, .el. Well, HARP is H-A-R-P, but in reality it's H-A-R-P, like the harp that you strum, because what does a harp do? A harp creates noise, how? Through tone, which is vibration. So we have X mouth. It's a speaking point for Saturn. X mouth. And right after this video, I'll put it on there so you can see it for yourself, and I outlined it in different colors. So you've got X mouth. All right, so it's a speaking point. It's communication. It's a communication a doorway. It's a communication to the planet Saturn. That's what it's saying. You know, which brings me to something else. You know, I always try and look into the Bible first. I was raised a Lutheran, and I believe in Jesus Christ. But I do believe, and I know since I was a little kid, what got me started in all of this is when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane before they came to take him to have him crucified. The disciples were falling asleep, and Jesus was getting pissed, and he told them, he said, listen, you guys, you got to wake up because they're coming to get me, and pretty soon I'm going to be gone. And so he said, listen, and as he explained through the night, he said, there's many other things I'd like to tell you, but you couldn't understand them, okay, or to bear them. And I remember as a little kid asking, pastors and teachers, what was it that Jesus, was trying to say? And nobody could answer it, or they wouldn't answer it. And, it was at that point as a small kid that I started to formulate in my head that Jesus was saying more in the Bible than what people were picking up on. In other words, the innuendos, read between the lines type of stuff. Now, I had a real rough childhood, and so I'm just going to give you a little bit of history on how I got on this whole timeline thing. And my mom was real violent when I was a kid. And, she had a way of drinking too much. And I remember one time when she beat the shit out of me when I was a little kid. I remember I was 5 years old. And I remember she told me that the reason that she had problems when she was a kid was because of me. Now, at 5 years old, I already knew that the timeline was wrong. And I told her, I said, well, wait a minute. You were here before I was. But see, maybe this is what planted all this in my head. I didn't know anything about the Saturnalian thing, but I did know about time. Okay? So let's go jump back into the Bible for a minute. So we already know that there's a harp establishment in a place called Exmouth, which is a connection between Saturn and harp. Okay? Let's go back and look at the story of Noah. Okay? The story of Noah. The story goes, you've all heard it, I'm sure. So God told Noah, look, build an ark, because I'm going to flood the world. There was really no rain before that because the ozone was thicker, it was misty, people didn't know of rain. I'm not so sure that this was even really a flood like what they think. Because what I'm about to tell you, it just doesn't make sense. It was some kind of a calamity. That I'm sure that there was, because this is not the first time the world's been around. Because God told Adam and Eve to be fruitful and replenish the earth. And if you jump into the book of John, it says, they use the word tohu babohu, which is the world was made void, and the world was made again. Okay? So there we know, at least on two different occasions, that the book of Ecclesiastics, a time to build up, a time to tear down. Well, that's Saturnalian. In the occult, Saturn always destroys what he creates and recreates it. So that aside, so let's say that this all went down, that God told Noah, look, you're the good guy on here, everybody else is wicked. I'm going to wipe them all out. But I'm going to give them a chance to repent. So while you're building this boat, you go and tell them, look, there's something big coming, right? So the story goes on, everybody laughs at him, they think he's a nut. And plus, he was a drinker. We definitely know that because the story goes on to say that his son saw him naked and they were cursed and blah, blah, whatever. Okay, so the guy enjoyed a couple of beers, who doesn't? So what happens is, so it rains and it kills all the people in the world, okay? For 40 days and 40 nights it rains, it floods, it's supposed to wipe out these things called the Nephilim and all the evil people. But it clearly states at the end of the story that there was, some of the Nephilim survived, okay? And the one particularly that survived was called Og. Well, his name is spelled O-G. Incidentally, this is why you have that name on the street for the original gangsters, because the Nephilim are the OG, the original gangsters. But those creeps at the top like to incorporate this in and make it fashionable. That's what OG is. That goes back to the Nephilim, the troublemakers, the original gangsters. Okay? So now you know where that comes from. But so let's say that the story is true, and so all of a sudden now the whole world's wiped out, and now the ark winds up on Mount Ararat, if it really is even a mountain. It just means a high place, yeah? One other thing, it's interesting because you've all seen the model of Noah's Ark. It looks like a regular boat. But if you go and you read the story of the version of Gilgamesh, the Ark was a cube. If I got to take my choice, I'd probably say it was pretty much a cube, considering everything else in the freaking Bible is. Okay? So whatever this thing is that they're in lands, okay, and then they get out, and the world starts all over again. Well, this story cannot be true. Not in the way that it's told. Because it isn't like one of his sons got out and said, hey, I'm going to change my name to Giuseppe and become, and become Italian and start making pizzas. Where did all the pizzas go? Twink, be quiet. That was Twink chiming in. Where did all the people go? And where did all the, we should all literally be speaking Hebrew, which is ancient Phoenician. Where did all the other races come from? I understand that languages break down and they change. Where did all the other people come from? Where did the black man come from? Where did the Chinese man come from? Where did the Indian come from? Where did the Asians come from? The story could not have happened the way it's saying. The story is just a story of some calamity, but it could not have been in the fashion that it says, because we would all be speaking Phoenician. Okay? So then you've got the Tower of Babel. Okay? The Tower of Babel. What is the Tower of Babel? Well, the word Bab means doorway. El means Saturn. So it was a doorway to Saturn. Well, maybe Harp is the Tower of Babel. It's the doorway. It's an opening. When they talk about the Tower of Babel, it wasn't an actual building. It was communication. Word. Listen to the very beginning of the Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. But the Word is not God. The Word, the sound, the tone. It's the tone. It's the vibration. It's the vibration. So we had a bunch of people conglomerated together that understood how the system worked, that we don't know how today, but science is doing this behind the scenes, which is probably what HARP is. And they were all trying to get together, and the real creator came down and said, hey, F this. No, this ain't going to happen. You ain't going to trump me. I'm the creator. And so that's where the different languages came from. But we should have, at least up until that point, all been speaking Phoenician. Or that's what the Hebrews speak. So the Tower of Babel, that I believe. The flood I don't believe, because it doesn't make sense. First of all, you would have had to say that all of civilization had to be crushed into one small area for him to get the word out to everybody. Okay? The world was different back in those days. The continents were not shaped the same. So the story is coded. It's telling you that something major happened, but I don't believe it was a flood like water, even though this world has been destroyed and created numerous times. Okay? We are not the first ones to be here. Civilizations go up and civilizations go down. That's what the pyramids are. The pyramids are directly connected with Saturn, because the Saturn on the top North Pole is a perfect hexagon. And that hexagon creates a cube. And that cube is what creates the Kabbalistic tree of life. But it's a time cube. When that thing spins and gets in certain positions against other planets, okay, that sets up, they have a playbook for this stuff. I've never seen it. I'm just saying they have a playbook, and this is why wars are started, and this is why depressions come, and it's just the way the system works. The Kabbalistic Jews, worship two deities, basically. The first one is Saturn. The second one is the moon, because Saturn and the moon always work in conjunction with each other. They always work in conjunction with each other, without exception. Okay? I talked to a guy one time, I'm not going to say his name because it's not privy for me to say, but he told me, he says, here's how it works. At least he gave me a little bit. He says, it goes from the center of Saturn through the center of the moon and down through the center of the earth. Okay, well, that seems like simple geometry to me. So we're talking about angles. Okay, what are angles? Angles are degrees. Okay, I'm just saying. I don't know how it works. We never went any farther with it, and I don't really think that I need to know how it works. But getting back to this thing with HARP, when you get done with this, when you get done listening to or watching me here, I'll put it on here and you can see it for yourself. So I need to go find out where these other HARPs places are at and look at the names of them, because it's just not a coincidence. As I like to say, at some point it stops being a coincidence and becomes evidence. So it's highly unlikely that they would build it at a place called Exmouth, make this giant array of antennas which create tones and vibrations, and then name it after a doorway to Saturn. It ain't happening, believe me. The other thing I wanted to bring up before I end this is, I know that a lot of people think that the chemtrails are there to poison you and kill you. A lot of it is aluminum that they're spraying. And of course, everything has a byproduct that creates either good or bad. Of course, if you start spraying fucking, excuse my language, aluminum into the atmosphere, you're going to get some kind of, blowback from it that ain't good for the environment. But I don't think that is why they're doing it. If you've ever messed around with radios, you'll understand. If you've ever been driving in your car, and you're driving and you turn on a radio station and all of a sudden it gets weaker and weaker and farther and farther. It's because the signal's dropping off. Because FM, which is frequency modulation, when it comes off the tower, it goes in a straight line. Yeah? And so as it goes out, it starts dropping off because a radio wave has mass. It starts dropping off, and eventually you get farther out than the radio wave is. Okay? AM, which is amplitude modulation, goes up and hits the ionosphere and bounces down. Okay? And there's a whole art to doing that, where these guys can talk on the other side of the world with 2 watts of power, which isn't much for traveling that distance. But it's my personal belief that the reason that they're spraying this crap all over the planet is because when you put the aluminum in the air, which is what most antennas are made out of, okay? They're not made out of gold, and they're not made out of brass. They're made out of aluminum. If you spray enough of the shit in the air, then the whole planet becomes a big-ass antenna. And whatever's being sent back and forth from there or whatever, we don't have to wait for certain conditions. See, because when you work with ham radio, there's things that interfere with that, sun flares and all kinds of other things that will increase the radio wave's distance or greatly decrease it. So if we make the whole planet an antenna through the air, we don't have to worry about that stuff, because no matter where we transmit, it's going to go into the bigger antenna, which is now into the atmosphere of the Earth, and that information will get through. That's what I think is what they're spraying the aluminum for. Okay? So you have Bab-El, doorway to Saturn. It's an antenna. Okay? What do you do with antennas? You talk, you speak. Same thing as the Tower of Babel. It's trying to communicate with that thing. That's my opinion. When you look at it, you see the Kabbalistic 3 cubes, and when you see 33, that's just a designation for 3 squared, or 3 times 3 equals 9, and 9 is the number of Saturn. So this is not by accident, this stuff. So I'm just going to wrap it up with that. I know that this world's had many calamities, but the story of Noah does not make any sense. First of all, how would he have got around the world to tell everybody? Number 2, when they got off, yes, languages break down, but just because a language breaks down doesn't mean a guy goes from being white to being black, or being Jewish to becoming Chinese. They've manipulated stories. That's why it's called the King James Authorized Version. Because the real story they can't tell you, see? Because it was all based on keeping you an effing idiot for the rest of your life. Religion means to tie down, restrain, or hold back. It has nothing to do with spirituality. You're spiritual. That book has some great stuff in it, but it's a book of high physics. With the exception of Jesus Christ, that part I believe, because he's the only guy ever to stand up against the establishment. Aside from that, it's a lot of innuendos. It's coded. It's biased. The Old Testament is Semitic. There's 13 races of Semites on the planet. And then you've got the New Testament, which is written by the Vaticans and the Masons. King James, what the book is named after, was openly a Mason. Well, I don't know if you know much about those guys, but they have an agenda. Okay? So let's just leave it at that. Let's just concentrate on the fact that there's a place called Exmouth, E-X-M-O-U-T-H, in Australia. That is a harp establishment that is sending information. In my opinion, it makes sense. with everything that's going on. And so just go ahead and look at these pictures, and we'll just leave it at that for today. Thanks. Real quick, I had ended the film, but I wanted to put this in real quick. In the book of Revelations, it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the coming of man, which is basically stating, just like it was in the days of Noah, where men were eating and drinking and marrying and carrying on regular business, so will it be in the end times. In other words, just before the calamity happened, everything was exactly the same. Okay? Everything was the same. People were doing business and bang, something major happened. So it goes on to say, you know, farther on it says, and men will faint from fear of things to come. There's something they're not telling us. It's tied to that planet. I don't know what it is. You know, this thing, let me clarify this. Planet X is planet Saturn. X represents Saturn because it's the oldest symbol in the world for that planet. The X is the seal of Saturn. They just change it a little bit and overlap it. Okay? Nibiru is not a planet. Nibiru is a point on the moon. Okay? Nibiru is a point on the moon. It's a lunar point. Saturn works in conjunction with the moon. You can go look at any Jewish website, and you'll see they'll show Saturn, then they'll show the moon, and then they'll show the Earth. Okay? I remember one that it was absolutely fabulous the way they did it. It started out, you flew through Saturn, you flew through the moon, and you flew right through the Earth. Just like that guy told me how it works. Nibiru is a point on the moon. Saturn is planet X. Planet X is the destroyer. It's already here. That's why things are going so badly. Because there's a timetable that the men that have the ancient playbook basically know when these things are in certain positions, certain things have to happen. That's why I keep telling you this banking scandal is really a scandal because it doesn't exist. They're pulling the money back and saying, oh, there's just all these troubles. There are no fucking problems. It's all based off of a playbook that goes back thousands of years. It's how they control the populations. You know, let me just get back to this real quick. What happened to all of those people? Where did these people go that supposedly perished? You know? It's a scary thought. What's up there on Saturn that's so freaking important? That we have to keep in communication with it, that we have to name all of our products after it, that we have to have it on all of our logos, that it has to be in our songs, that it has to be on our military weapons. I mean, it clearly says in Genesis that the fallen angels are the ones that taught women the art form of divination, how to speak with familiar spirits. And they're the ones that taught man how to make war. So Jesus said, I'm not the ruler of this world, I come from another place. So well, then that just leaves Saturn or Satan. Okay? But the God of the Old Testament is Yahweh and Yahoo are the same dude. Interesting, remember the video I did? Yahoo on the PC. Always wants a blood sacrifice. Well, what does he want a blood sacrifice for? Why does he need that? I only can come up with one conclusion. Because in Christianity, the soul is it's your spirit. Yeah? And when you die, that spirit exits and it goes on to either hell or heaven. But in a lot of religions, that's not the case. In a lot of religions, your blood is your soul because it is the life force. Okay? And there's been numerous religions that have to do with the drinking of blood. Okay? Now this even gets weirder because when you get into Revelations, it says the beheading of the Christians, and it says that the blood will be at the height of a horse's neck. You know? I mean, I don't want to get too weirded out on this because it's even scary for me to think about. You know, but blood is an energy. It's a force. You know, that's why this whole thing is very, very bizarre. Do they need us for something? Is there something that needs our blood? You know, these FEMA camps with these coffins that'll hold 4 people. You know, what is that? What, are those coffins? I mean, why would they actually put you in that to bury you in that? All they got to do is, like they did in World War II, They dig a big ass hole and they throw your body in it. They don't pack you nicely in these things that'll hold 4 bodies to put you in the ground. Sounds more like a shipping crate to me. I don't know. I'm just saying. If you're going to commit mass murder, you're not going to worry about giving last rites. You're just going to kill them, throw them in a big ass hole, and bury them. But if you had to send them somewhere, well, then you have to have a container. I don't know, man. I don't want to weird you out. I'm just thinking out loud, basically. There's something going on here, real big. The story of Moses or Noah and all of those people that disappeared, it doesn't make sense. FEMA is not going to spend money to contain people. You know, if there's going to be this mass calamity, it ain't going to happen. Go watch any Holocaust video and you'll see the tractors pushing the dead bodies into big holes and then burying it. They didn't put them in caskets and then send them home. You know, which brings me to my next point. I know this video is getting long, but let's just think for a minute. The word Holocaust is always assumed to be a big, mass, terrible whatever. But that's not what it really means. The first time it's used in the Bible when, I believe it's in Genesis, where God told Cain and Abel to bring their holocaust unto the Lord. Okay? Cain and Abel had to bring their holocaust unto the Lord. A holocaust, if you go look at the definition, is a burnt sacrifice or offering. So now we know that at least it's an offering, and it's supposed to be a burnt offering. Okay? So it's a sacrifice. You're taking a life and you're giving to that thing. Okay? What really happened in those war camps? I mean, what aren't they telling us? What really went down? I really don't think that the Jews and the Nazis are enemies. I really don't. I think I've read enough of Phoenician history to know that they believe that the earth requires a payment of blood. Okay? The Jews speak ancient Phoenician. There is no Hebrew language. So the earth requires a sacrifice. It requires blood to even things out because the earth gives, and so paganistically they would give back by bloodshed. That's why you see this bloodshed going on all over the world in the olden days in every religion, including the Hebrew, you know, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Toltecs, you know, because, you know, the blood is a life force. So what really went on in those war camps? Because it makes me wonder, because, you know, Saturn's color is black, yeah? That's in mythology, his color is black. He's the god of authority. That's why all religious and legal authorities, judges, cops, rabbis, priests, SWAT teams, CIA, FBI, they all wear black because it represents the god of authority, which is Saturn. So you got this Nazi bastard, yeah, who represents the planet Saturn, got these poor immigrants locked in here, and what are they doing? They're burning them up. I mean, that's all that we know that they were doing. They could have been doing a lot of other things, I'm sure they will. And so they're burning them up, but it's the Jews that are calling it a Holocaust. And that word Holocaust didn't become a phrase until, I think, 1956. The war ended in 45. So the Jews are calling it a Holocaust, knowing damn well what the word Holocaust means. The Gentile wouldn't know what that means. The Gentile always associates it with a big, terrible doodah or whatever. But the Jew knows that it means a burnt offering or sacrifice. Okay? Now Hitler made him wear a yellow star armband. Well, what's the yellow star? Saturn is called the black sun, the dark star. But in astrology, not astronomy, astronomy, not astrology, Saturn is called the yellow planet. So here you have a guy who's in the order of the black sun, which is Saturn, taking these people and sacrificing them to the dark star, which is Saturn, wearing a yellow star, which represents Saturn. See, there's something, see, and then the people that scream, look at what they did to us, are the ones that call it a Holocaust, but they know what the word Holocaust is. But they don't explain it to the Gentiles, see, because we're Goyim, see, they call us Goyim, it means cattle, which even that word is scary in itself. You have all these people that disappear, and they tell you it's a flood, yeah? You got all these people that disappear and they say it's a flood, but what is it? What we don't know. We don't really know what happens. But they're calling them cattle. Yeah? Well, are they calling us cattle because we're stupid, or are they calling us cattle because we're a food source? You know? I mean, all of this, it's all weird. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the coming of man. What is coming? What is coming? Why are they calling it a Holocaust? Where did these people go? You know? It doesn't make any sense. I'm telling you, there's a big part of this puzzle that they ain't told us, but I can guarantee you, that ball, or whatever that is what's behind all of this. This is something that's very ancient and been very, very well hidden. All right, that's it. That's all the talking I'm going to do.
Greetings. This is a small transmission of the local galactic government, part of the wider commonwealth of 13 galactic clusters. You can refer to us in one word: Andromedians. You may have heard of us from other sources, but allow us to establish one critical fact. During a galactic uprising that brought great destruction in 1/3 of this galaxy, certain groups of our Commonwealth joined forces with the Rebel Alliance. This alliance is led by the Draconian species, governed by 24 plus 3 council members under a High Commander. This ruler goes by many names, most of which are recorded in your planet's history. Point being is that the rebel Andromedians have been acting as intermediaries between the Draconian Alliance and Earth governments, which they have come to control. Their goal is the enslavement of your planet, the extraction of its resources, and the complete extermination of all life. Then the Draconian fleet of 118 war planets, including its 2 flagships, will depart for a critical nerve node of the universal organism. We cannot and will not allow this to happen. Your enslavement has been orchestrated by an artificial race that many of you consider native to your planet. It is not. During your current state, you cannot enter a direct conflict with them. This is our duty. But what you can do is protect yourselves and survive until our arrival. Operative warning is: death rises in the east, but the west has been infiltrated by eastern agents on all levels. Deal with those agents as we deal with the real threat. We have gathered an armada of 960 war planets in multiple dimensions, 340 of which are visible to you. We have been situated around and beyond the trajectory range of Saturn. Any species activity on the inside planets is considered hostile to you. We do not use channeling. We do not send messages to psychics. We only transmit through a strict medium of neutrino beams. The clear reason is that your oppressors do not have access to this technology. Beware of what you call false flag operations. Earth will be invaded by the Draconian Alliance, posing to be us. This would include atrocities in order to condition humanity against us, and to unite you under a world government. Your Illuminati New World Order is but a predecessor of an even more cruel order that was orchestrated by the Draconians' artificial race. The enemy, on-world and off-world, has rejected our terms of surrender. We will intervene in massive and overwhelming force. Our 5th and 6th dimension forces have arrived at your planet, as they cannot be traced or inhibited by the Draconian Alliance. We consider your own dimension being the first, in terms of density. Translating to your terms, you are 3rd dimension, and the enemy exists up to the 5th dimension. We have forces up to the 9th. Once we secure that all the nuclear weapons that have been placed within the Earth's crust in order to destabilize the planet have been neutralized, we will invade. When your rapid eye movement during your sleep ceases to produce erratic dreams and nightmares, know that the enemy's flagship has fallen. A flagship we call Level. A flagship you call a Moon. Our true arrival will be signaled by one major event: the extermination of all planetary governments, especially those who have aligned themselves with the eruption of the upcoming World War. Until then, everything else is a lie. You were once citizens of the Galactic Commonwealth. You were invaded and enslaved. We received your distress call and we have sealed the entrances and exits of this solar system. Negotiations with the Draconian Alliance have failed. We are on our way.
Message from the Arcturians, the volunteers.
September 9th, 2013.
Note from Sue.
I woke up this morning with the following dream and message.
We are the Arcturian.
speaking to you from the now of 1946. We are in what is known as a hospital awaiting the birth of the female human that we will be overlighting. The year is 1946 and Earth is in great danger again and still. Gaia has put out another call to the Ashta Command and the Galactic Federation to assist her. She needs some humans who can be a genetic combination of galactics and celestials to assist her in the dangerous times ahead. The testing and the droppings of atomic bombs have wounded her body all the way into her fourth-dimensional expression. It appears that the Draconians wearing human forms have lost this latest world war, but in reality they have infiltrated much of the Allied forces that appeared to have won. These forces have now gone underground, both literally via their many underground cities, and physically in that, many Draconians have taken an Earth vessel to disguise their true nature. To counteract this ruse, we of the Galactic Federation are contributing our genetics to certain humans who have volunteered for this mission. We will then overlight them throughout their lifetime. We, meaning the Arcturians, have joined our genetics with the Pleiadians, Antarians, and Sirians from Sirius B, which is one of our galactic regional centers. The contribution of this genetic combination will be implanted in our galactic family members who have volunteered to take a human vessel during this now. The main area in which these decisions and actions are occurring are on the Arcturian mothership. Our mothership that has been overlighting dear Gaia during the horrific destructions during World Wars I and II. From our nowness on the mothership we can see there are many possible realities in which Earth is destroyed by yet another world war. In fact, the seeds for this Third World War are already planted. We see that the Zeta Reticuli who have worked with the Nazis on their plan to create a superior race are about to shift their attention to the United States. The United States has taken many of the German masterminds into their scientific community. Also, the Draconians in human disguise who supported the Nazis during the first two world wars have shifted their interests to the United States. From the Draconians' perspective of the fourth dimension, they have been able to view the possible reality of their defeat during World War II and are already planning another world war, with their base in the United States. Because the Draconian timeline is out of phase with third-dimensional Earth time, they are able to implant their genetic codes into many of the founding fathers of the United States. They have already taken over the Freemasons, who have been the holders of the Atlantean technology and information since Julius Caesar destroyed the Great Library in Alexandria, Egypt. To combat what the Draconians have done, as well as what we see the United States will allow the Zetas to do, we have decided that we must implant much of our genetic material into humans who are being born from this now of 1946 and forward. These humans will have a greater chance of receiving and activating the 97% ascension genes that have been turned off in humanity until the fifth dimensional light can activate them. The ones who are born just after World War II will be mature adults during the possible timelines of Gaia's ascension. Therefore, we are contributing our genetic material, as well as our constant higher guidance, to as many of these humans as possible. In this manner, we anticipate that some of them will be able to remain in some degree of contact with their higher expressions of self. We also hope that this multidimensional contact will assist them to remember to accept the higher light into their consciousness so that it can activate their 97% galactic DNA. Those humans will have the ability to remember their true multidimensional natures, and will be able to communicate with their Pleiadian, Sirian, and Arcturian higher expressions of their multidimensional self. Since these galactic beings were amongst the ones who initially seeded the human race, we have been chosen to assist Gaia by assisting her people. From our location in the fifth dimensional now we can see all possible future realities. Therefore, we know that even though Gaia's plans for planetary ascension have been greatly disrupted by the Draconian humans, stemming from this 1946 timeline there is still a possible reality in which Gaia does, indeed, ascend. Therefore, we have decided to genetically upgrade certain members of the human race. We are hoping that this upgrade, as well as our constant overlighting of these volunteers, will create a support system for Gaia's plan to transmute her third-dimensional shell back into her true fifth-dimensional light planet. As we look forward to that impending time of 2014 and beyond, we see a strong possible reality in which enough humans can transmute their third-dimensional physical body into their fifth-dimensional light body. We know that Gaia will be ready, her minerals, plants and animals will be ready, but many humans will still be trapped in the darkness of 3D illusion. It is for this reason that we have decided to contribute our genetics and constant guidance. Oh! We sense that the physical being we are overlighting is about to be born, but there appears to be a problem. We will need to overlight her from within the surgery room. In this timeline the mother is often put to sleep so she does not suffer the pain of delivery. However, the labor has been long and the mother cannot assist in the birthing process while she is unconscious. Immediately, we are in the surgery room. We see the light body of the one soon to be born hovering over the mother's inert body. We will have to enter her physical form while in utero, or she will not survive. Thus, we send a fragment of our collective self into the mother, then into the unborn babe. The mother is awake to her physical form, which allows her to perceive our assistance from her etheric self. In this manner, we are able to assist with the delivery. However, the mother has been under the ether too long, and her life signs alarm the doctor and nurses. Hence, the newborn is somewhat abandoned on a metal weighing table while everyone tends to the mother. This moment of abandonment will be replayed in her psyche until her full awakening. On the other hand, being a newborn, she is able to perceive our energy field, which is lovingly encompassing her while the others tend to the mother. This early merging of consciousness, which appeared to occur as a mistake, will actually assist her perceptions of us throughout her life. It is in this manner that we, her higher expressions of self, remember the density and chaos of the third dimension. Just as she and the others who have volunteered for this assignment will greatly benefit from our guidance, we will learn through them how best to guide humanity. All of those who volunteered to take this away mission will be wearing an Earth vessel that has been seeded with galactic DNA. We are hopeful that this higher dimensional DNA will assist them to activate and merge with the higher expressions of their multidimensional self at an early age. The difficult component for our volunteers will be the great loneliness for home that they will suffer. We move forward now into the timeline from the 1950s through the early 1990s, in which the Zeta Reticuli are using human DNA to augment their own over-replicated DNA. Because of their long war with the Draconians, as well as their own mistreatment of the planetary surface, the Zetas needed to retreat into the inner caverns of their planet. Before they realized it, they had become sterile and had to replicate themselves via cloning. Since they cloned out emotions, they were unaware of the fear they induced in their human subjects. The Zetas, along with their Draconian companions, came to Earth to take DNA samples from their abductees. They were especially interested in the humans who had volunteered to be our away team to Earth because they were holding a constant genetic connection with us, the members of the Galactic Federation. The United States made a deal with the Zetas to exchange human DNA for Zeta advanced technology. As shown in the X-File series, this technology was kept by the Illuminati, Draconians in human vessels, and was never shared with the masses of the people. The away team of our galactics and celestials in human vessels has had to silently know what could not be discussed for many decades. They knew the truth of what was occurring because we told them. We told them everything in their dreams and meditations and guided them toward information when we saw they were ready. Many of our away team felt different, isolated and alone with an inner secret that they did not totally understand and would not dare share with anyone. Therefore, they became lonely, depressed and often went off into their imagination. However, when others thought they were just daydreaming, they were actually communicating with us. Unfortunately, once their consciousness returned to 3D life, they usually forgot what had occurred in their higher dimensional selves. With that brief history lesson, we the Arcturians return to your now of full awakening. Due to all that we have described, many of our away team forgot to remember their higher dimensional expressions. They, you, were often haunted by dreams and imaginations, which were actually the true reality. In addition, the brainwashing of the third dimension was much worse than we had predicted. Therefore, many members of our away team in human form forgot about the higher expressions of their multidimensional self that actually connected them to their home for which they so longed. And some of our away team was primarily associated with the celestial angelic kingdom. On the other hand, some of them were primarily associated with the members of the Galactic Federation and Ashta Command. Thus, some of you have more angelic traits and others have more galactic traits. However, once your awareness expands into your higher fourth and fifth dimensional expressions of your multidimensional self, your reality will become increasingly based on unity with all life. Then the difference between angelic and galactic will merge into the true unity of the One. In the higher dimensions, angels, Galactic Federation members, Ascended Masters, and Elohim, who are builders and holders of form, all merge into the One of the Now. Then, as your consciousness increasingly merges with the higher expressions of your multidimensional self, your human graduation from third-dimensional individual consciousness will transmute into the higher dimensional unity consciousness with all life. We, your higher dimensional expressions, are here in the ever-present now to merge with our courageous representatives on Earth. We see that all of you have suffered much, but have not given up on your own inner directives. We commend you all for somehow remembering us, who are higher expressions of yourself, in spite of the immense third-dimensional campaign to force you all to live in fear and follow that which is outside of you. You, our beloved volunteers who have chosen to wear an Earth vessel during this time of great personal and planetary transmutation, are always with us. We are with you, and observe how, even when you are tired, frightened or angry, you carry on. Somehow, you have remembered to remember yourself. Because of your courage and tenacity, we can openly communicate with you in your now. We thank you for remembering your true multidimensional self and lovingly commend you on your great sacrifice and courage. Despite all barriers that you have confronted, we see that you are still able to hear our call to action. Remember that we are you now. Together we serve Gaia in her task of planetary ascension.
Pleiadian message for 14 tourists on attention dear one. Pleiadian light workers have become aware of certain entities that have caused much confusion about 2012. The Extinction Protocol and those who play predatory games promoting the bombing of Iran and fear-based nonsense which keeps people glued to the internet in search of answers. They are internet scam artists, demonic vampires trying to get lifeblood from sacred VDS spells, and porn collectors trying to manipulate and seduce young women and men. These groups and individuals are hiding behind the enlightened sounding names like Consciousness Awakening, Sacred Convent, Cosmic Alchemy, The Great Awakening, The Flower of Life, 2012, Angels, Gaia and Healing. Some of the information they share will resonate highly with you, because they are aware that it is necessary to tell 3 truths so you can tell a lie. Be sure that when you are feeling energized that this is pure love healing, and when you feel confused or frustrated, drained of your energy, you may be dealing with dark forces. They are very manipulative. They will suggest that you are different, that you should go within, that you need to expand your mind with drugs and hypnotizing videos. They will tell you that they have a special connection with you. They will direct you to websites that offer to heal you for oracle card readings. This is often a scam. You have all the power and knowledge inside you already, dear ones. Many times in history, people have been told to wake up. Some of those that are now telling you this are not themselves awake but are playing out an agenda. They will be very easy to spot, because they work together in connected circles. If you were really waking up, you would not be on the internet so much, but would be of more service to your neighbors and family. You would be out in nature building the tree house, not posting pictures of it. The images these entities use to get your attention are positive pictures of nature and sustainable living, symbols, alchemy and magic, and pictures of animals and flowers and mandalas. These people are mostly carnivorous and capitalistic, trying to get your attention and direct you to their websites where they can get your credit card payment. Do not submit, dear ones. Those light workers who have had to remain pure may have chosen to no longer participate in this realm. The geography will need to recover from the earthquakes attacking her foundation. Please allow us to offer you assistance through love to move past these agendas into the cosmic consciousness. We do not judge you on your journey, but always offer you another opportunity to grow.
Arcturian Group Message, July 6, 2014. Dear ones, we come again to greet you with words of love and encouragement, for we understand how difficult the world has become for so many. Indeed, things really are proceeding as they should, so try not to get distracted by the images you see through an understanding that images represent the third-dimensional consciousness and manifestation. This understanding was Buddha's enlightenment experience. He then tried to teach others, but most were unable to fully comprehend the idea, and believed that since the whole world was an illusion, it was okay to ignore the suffering of others. The world is real, it is the false interpretations of duality and separation consciousness that constitute illusion. When you give illusions your concern, thought, worry, etc., you empower them with your energy. There is only one power, and that one is real, forever, and held in place by divine law. Mankind is beginning to recognize this and see things for what they are, interpreting from a state of higher awareness. God never formed itself as power struggles, wars, hatred, disease, or any of the negative situations manifesting now. These things are mind interpretations based in a world consciousness of duality and separation. Love is the connection and interaction between the many within the one, but this interaction becomes severely distorted when beliefs of separateness are held in a belief system. Error can never become the truth, no matter how many may believe it. You can say over and over that 2 times 2 equals 5, and the whole world may agree, but that will never make it true, and as long as you continue to believe it, your personal checkbook will be off. Much of what you are now witnessing in the world as increased violence is the effect of higher frequency energies shining into corners of long-standing shadows, making it appear as though the world is becoming ever more violent and dense, but which in reality is illuminating that which needs to be looked at and changed. Every time you silently acknowledge truth even while witnessing discord, you are doing the work of helping dissolve obsolete energies from universal human consciousness. Your job is to know the truth, the spiritual reality behind the image, about everything you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. We have stated this many times, but we repeat, this is light work, this is how you live as light workers. By not entering into and giving the illusions of sense more reality and power and then trying to fix them. This does not mean that you make the mistake many have made of sitting back and blindly saying, "Oh, it is all illusion, I need do nothing." This means you take whatever human footsteps you are guided to take, but only after realizing that appearances have no law or reality to support them. You will find that you become somewhat detached to many issues that in the past deeply affected you because now your energy no longer resonates with them. We would like to talk about freedom, which is the word most often used as an excuse to kill and be killed in war. Freedom is your divine birthright. You could never not be free in reality, for who could imprison God? As you learn who and what you are, you will come into the awareness that you are and always have been free. Even if you sit in a prison cell, you can learn to be free within yourself, and will find that as these deeper truths become your state of consciousness, your freedom will manifest in an outer way. Freedom is a state of consciousness, and can never be attained through war, power struggles, or the destruction of others. Freedom is already embodied within you, and the belief that you must attain it regardless of the consequences to others, who are actually yourselves in different form, all are made of the same stuff, is the height of the duality and separation belief system, and is being kept alive by those who stand to profit from it. It is only the ignorance of an unevolved state of consciousness that has for eons led mankind to seek outside of themselves for that which is already within. You are evolved enough to move into new and higher ways of understanding and experiencing freedom. This is the lesson. Truth must be realized and lived if mankind is to evolve into and then manifest higher ways of living. The first step is to stop giving power to anything or anyone, for the only power there is within you. Seeming powers are the result of beliefs held in the universal human mind, the one mind distorted by beliefs of duality and separation. This may be difficult for some to swallow, but every individual at a certain phase of their evolutionary journey begins to not care what the world presents as power, because they have attained the realization that there is only one power. As you live and move and have your being in this awareness, you experience an inner freedom even if someone is trying to keep you in some form of bondage. You see, as with all things, the inner state of consciousness manifests as outer. Freedom is, always has been, and always will be yours, but the world has not known this, and has thus struggled to attain it outwardly. Those who find themselves in situations they themselves have created which are not easily gotten out of, may find nothing seems to change even as they begin to realize that freedom is within. If this is your situation, do not give up in frustration, but instead understand that an apparent absence of physical, emotional, or mental freedom usually involves some karmic lesson specifically chosen by an individual for learning and evolution. As the lesson needed is learned and moved beyond, the reality, freedom, must manifest. This does not mean you cannot take human footsteps, but means that you must be very honest as to whether or not you are running away from a situation, or have evolved beyond needing it. Know that certain actions appropriate for the unevolved soul may not be right for an evolved one. Always trust your intuition. There is a popular statement, freedom isn't free. Well, we beg to differ. Freedom is free when recognized and claimed. Wars are manufactured by those who stand to profit from them. Never forget that. All are within the one. You are the person you war against, for there is only one individualized as the many, and it can never be otherwise. Take these truths into your heart and ponder them, dear ones, for the energies of war and the profiteering from it in the name of freedom must dissolve into the nothingness that it is as mankind awakens. We are the Arcturian Group. Channeled by Marilyn Raphael. www.onenessofall.com. It is your nature to roam the divine cosmos freely. July 22, 2014. Within the illusion, time expands and contracts, it is unreal and unreliable, and yet as you experience it, it appears to move in a regular and linear fashion from the past, with all its memories, momentarily and continuously through the present, and into the uncertainty of a future that you try to forecast and pin down, and then something quite unexpected occurs. And that is one extremely good reason for living in the now. If you make a point of living in this now moment and dealing with events, situations, issues, and problems as they occur, relying on your intuition, the wisdom of your real self, all will flow far more smoothly for you. Trying to second-guess what may happen tomorrow, next week, or next year intensifies the levels of stress that you experience through living in the darkness of the illusion. Darkness because the light of God's love is hidden from you by the cloak or fog of the illusion. To see clearly you have to leave the illusion and all its concepts and logic far behind you. All the inspiring insights that the great minds among you have discovered over the eons have been revealed to them when they were not anchored by the limits that the illusion imposes upon you, but when they were as it were roaming free through the cosmos of their unlimited minds, ignoring all the preconceptions and cultural beliefs that may have suggested that what they were seeking was an impossible dream, unreal, a myth. It is your nature to roam the divine cosmos freely, unfettered by logical human thought that invents rules based on inadequate understanding, which then severely limits your creative abilities. Rules restrain and limit you unnaturally. They are, however, very convenient aspects of the illusion where separation seems substantial and tangible, and they provide a framework that ensures, for instance, that people driving motor vehicles do not, on the whole, collide with each other because they are all following the same rules in a rather crowded environment. That aspect of rules is very useful as you struggle with the stresses and anxieties of daily living, because it provides guidelines that enable you to be reasonably certain that your personal safety is assured. What has happened over the eons is that many of the rules and regulations have become an inflexible and unquestioned overlay to all that you do, rather like an open prison, severely restricting your creative abilities in the form of imaginary blockages to progress. It is a bit like being in a room with many doors or exits, all but one of which are wide open, and you can only see the one that is closed and think that you are therefore unable to leave. In the last few decades there has been enormous growth in the numbers questioning all the rules, and this is very healthy. God created you free. You chose to restrict yourselves by building the illusion and enclosing yourselves within it, and finally you are questioning it on a massive scale and coming to a collective realization that it is an asylum for the insane. It was insane to build the illusion. It was a totally unrealistic and impossible attempt to separate yourselves from God because He is all that exists, and therefore separation from Him is impossible. He created you in love and gave you everything that He had: infinite love, infinite wisdom, infinite knowledge, infinite power, and endless creative abilities and opportunities, and you chose to leave them all behind and enclose yourselves in a state of unreality where you eschewed those gifts to engage in the competitive destruction of one another, endlessly throughout the eons. It matters not what you achieve through your constant and determined human efforts: wealth, position, recognition, power, because all of these are ephemeral, they do not and cannot last, and the very limited satisfaction that they provide fades rapidly. Your true home is with God, you know that, and nothing else can ever satisfy your intense need to be one once more with Him. It has taken a long time for you to come to that realization and make the collective choice and decision to engage once again with love, so that the illusion can dissolve back into the nothingness from which you imagined it into existence. Every moment you spend within, in your quiet inner sanctuary, intending to be loving, compassionate, and accepting, accelerates the rate at which the illusion is crumbling. All the spiritual channels, all those in the spiritual realms keep stressing the vital importance of attending to your personal spiritual practices daily because that is how you awaken. It expresses an overriding intent to awaken, to know and experience the reality and the oneness that is your real and eternal nature. It is what everyone who ever engaged with the illusion has sought and is seeking. Deep within every sentient being is the knowing that you are one with God, the source from which all that exists flows in endless love. By choosing to give credence to the illusion, you have hidden that knowing from yourselves, and it is that apparent loss that is so painful for you. Nothing can be satisfactorily substituted for that all-encompassing sense of acceptance that oneness and the love that is its nature provides, nothing. And there is only oneness, there is no beyond or outside, no past or future, there is just now at one with Source. When you awaken, as you will, the joy and wonder that replaces all your doubts, anxieties, and fears will enfold you in a state of unimaginable ecstatic bliss. Go within daily, hourly if you can, and bring it to fruition, because that is what you are here to do. Your loving brother, Jesus. Channeled by John Smallman. johnsmallman2.wordpress.com